Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages then. Time to see what's making the headlines with the director of the Onward think tank, Sebastian Payne, and the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Sodha, with us from now until just before midnight. So welcome to both of you. As ever, let's check out the front pages, shall we? Front page of the Eye then, Generic goes rogue with a dig at number 10 on migration, their headline. The Sun has an exclusive interview with the father of Emily Hand, the Irish-Israeli schoolgirl who was among 17 hostages freed by Hamas in return for dozens of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. The Metro reports that a controversial new book about the royal family has been pulled from circulation in the Netherlands after a translation error fell foul of UK libel laws by naming a family member alleged to have made racist remarks about Harry and Meghan's son Archie. The Daily Mirror's headline on that story, New Harry and Meghan row, book names royal racist. According to the FT's international edition, Barclays is considering plans to drop thousands of clients from its investment arm in an effort to raise capital and cut costs. The Star carries criticism from the broadcaster Chris Packham over what he claims is the unfair treatment of animals on I'm a Celebrity. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us and listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Sonia Sodha and Sebastian Payne. Welcome to both of you. And let's start with the Sun, shall we? They stole her voice. The father of Emily Hand, the 9-year-old, he became known for suggesting that her death was better than the alternative, which was being held hostage, and now being reunited with a teddy bear and a happy birthday sign. You know, one of those heartrending stories it's certainly been.
Absolutely, and we're starting to hear some testimony from some of the hostages now. It's particularly the release of women and children. Very, very poignant here from Emily's dad. He says that she was told by the terrorists who kept her hostage that she had to stay silent for 50 days, and that's one of the reasons that she's not talking now. And, you know, one of the things that he said was that when he first saw her, he had to put his ear to her lips in order to be able to hear what she was saying. I just can't imagine what it would be like to be a young child kept in captivity. We've heard stories from some of the other relatives from the children who've been released. You know, a 12-year-old boy who was essentially kept in isolation for days, forced to watch videos of Hamas's atrocities. Just really, really awful stuff to bear. And you see these children, and, you know, there's actually been lots of footage of it on social media, which is very difficult to watch, I have to say, because these children are so clearly utterly traumatised. So it's just hard to find the words, really. But it's amazing that some hostages have been released as part of this 4-day temporary ceasefire, which now looks like it's going to last for longer. But there are still, you know, I think it's over 200 hostages who are still in Hamas captivity.
And what was interesting today is that it wasn't just Hamas that began handing over hostages. The Al-Quds Brigades, the armed wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement, also handed over civilian hostages. The suggestion was that they were at the handover point of contact as well, giving the hostages to the International Committee of the Red Cross. So do we conclude, therefore, that Hamas has run out of its own hostages who were part of this category of women and children now? And will it be we see older men, for example, being handed over soon? Or will they have to try and track down hostages held by other groups?
Well, I mean, it's not a good answer, but the fundamental thing is we just don't know because we know so little about where these hostages are, and there's been some reporting today internationally that Hamas don't know where all the hostages are within Gaza itself, because Hamas is not a coherent group. It has many different wings and elements to it, and some of those people have gone from different parts of the Strip, and they're obviously trying to gather as many as possible as part of this deal. But just coming back to the Sun front page here, I couldn't agree more with what Sonia said about reminding us the dreadful conditions these hostages have been held in. That there's been some very questionable reporting, in my view, of people who have been saying that actually the reports that they've been held in good conditions, that actually, in fact, this was a relatively all-right experience is completely not true at all. And the people who are promoting that are actually promoting Hamas propaganda. And to those who say, well, actually, Hamas is not like ISIS, and I have no idea why people find the need to draw equivocations here, just look at this reporting, look at this heartbreaking story from this girl and see the fact that being told to stay silent for 50 days, you know, this poor girl has been completely traumatised in this situation. And I think it's a very stark reminder of the awful situation these people have faced. And I think, like everyone, we have to pray that more of these hostages are released, that the ceasefire holds, and it's been struck through a very delicate diplomatic process through various international countries that has to hold, and many of them are freed as possible, because I think everybody knows that ultimately the hostilities probably will resume at some point, because Israel has set some very big targets to remove Hamas essentially from Gaza and no longer be a functioning unit. And that means they're not just going to stand back and let this continue. They are going to go back in fighting. But they've always said the number one priority is to get the hostages out. And that's what we're now seeing with this. But ultimately, for anyone who sort of says that this process for these hostages was they were treated well or it was an all-right experience, just look at this, read this story, and I think that highlights how it simply wasn't.
I mean, I guess the suggestion is that they were taken just for leverage, and that's why, you know, that was the specific aim of this.
In a barbaric way, in a completely disgusting way.
And I think there's, you know,
and having
young
seen horrors,
separated,
exactly.
young children who've seen their parents murdered and then separated from everything they know and held in captivity. I mean, it's unthinkable.
No, deeply traumatising. Another person who was free today is Ada Sagi, aged 75. She was due to come here to the UK, and her son, Noam, has certainly been one of the most vocal. He lives here in the UK, has been one of the most vocal, and he will be absolutely delighted. You know, he's campaigned hard for all of the hostages to be freed. We see pictures of them there. And the British-Israeli son of this woman has said that she's been freed. She was taken from her home in kibbutz near Oz on October the 7th. She had been due to celebrate her birthday with her family in London just days after she was taken hostage. So he's appeared on Sky News multiple times. He will be, you know, absolutely delighted. And, you know, that hope that your relative was alive, let alone being freed, because you don't know if anybody's been killed in the fighting as well. So obviously, I'm presuming he's flown to Israel and will have his own reunion. Let's move on, shall we, to the book fiasco, as the Metro puts it. You know, could this be a publicity stunt? We don't know. But anyway, the Netherlands edition of Endgame by Omid Scobie has caused a bit of a stir.
I mean, it's definitely winning some front pages, isn't it? And they do say...
It's what any author wants, really.
Yeah, there's no such thing as, you know, bad news, really, if you're in the business of marketing books. So this is a book by Meghan and Harry's friend, Omid Scobie. It's sort of kind of reveal all of, you know, the story of the royal family. I'm not sure if...
I mean...
Well, I'm not... I mean, we have had quite a lot revealed. And the whole point of this story is that we've all heard the tale about a certain member of the royal family who made really grim comments about speculating about what colour Meghan and Harry's baby would be when he was born. But no one knows who it was. And that was not supposed to be revealed in this book because it would fall foul of British libel laws. But apparently what's happened is that in the Netherlands, in the Dutch translation of this book, it somehow got included, and it's all been pulled from shelves now. So I'm sure most people will be kind of wondering who it is. But they seem to have sort of kept a lid on that, really. But, you know, it is, personally, I just sort of think, gosh, we've heard so much about this family saga, and it's not great for anyone involved.
Mainly from Omid Scobie, to be fair.
Yes, that's true, yes.
Yeah. And I think the point is, though, that he said that Meghan and Harry did not contribute to the book, but plenty of people, you know, close to them did. How will it help them, do you think? I mean, at the end of the day.
Well, to use Sonia's words, Omid Scobie, I think, would say himself, he is certainly friendly with friends of Harry and Meghan, is how he describes it in the book. But ultimately, he is someone who is very sympathetic to Harry and Meghan's worldview of how how they view the royal family. And his first book, Finding Freedom, put forward their side of the story about the split from the royal family. This book essentially is trying to follow up on this end game, and the book is trying to cast this idea that monarchy is on its last leg. It's all about to collapse, all about to end, which is clearly not the case. That they've had the transition from one monarch to another last year, which was a huge moment, which has gone very successfully, and I think the King's had an excellent first year on the throne, and it feels to me like this book is just trying to cash in on that success he had last year. But on this accusation of the family member who made these comments, these racist comments, you know, I mean, it's something that is very libelous, and that's why the individual's name is not in the book. But it sounds as if, according to the Metro tomorrow, there were some private letters that were sent to Dutch journalists that had the name of that person within it there, and that's why the book has been pulled. You're very cynical to say to marketing ploys, as you may have suggested there. But what I do think this shows is that obviously Mr. Scobie does like the salacious headlines, he does like to grab attention, and I would say that's how this has come across.
I mean, it's all over the papers. You know, I was reading earlier that how Kate, Princess of Wales, is now posher than her husband because of elocution lessons. It's all driven by her mother, etc., etc.
Have you read the book? Or are you going to buy it?
It isn't out today, no. Probably no and no, actually. But it's a bit of a bitch fest, isn't it? It's sort of the point I'm trying to make, and it's, you know...
Yeah. Yes. He's got an agenda, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it doesn't do anyone any favours, but I'm not sure any of the stuff that's been published about this whole affair. I mean, basically what it is, it's a warring family that's fallen out. That's all very tragic and sad for the people involved. I'm not sure that any of us need to hear about it, to be honest, but there is obviously a fascination.
There is, but I think the key thing about this is anyone going to change their mind after reading this book? And the answer is no, that if you have sympathy for Harry and Meghan, then you'll read Mr. Scobie's latest book and it'll give you continued sympathy and perhaps more. And if you don't like them, then this book will just confirm that entirely. So it's very much one of those topics where people's opinions are very much set in
However
stone.
he writes, he does it to make the papers, and he has succeeded at that.
Absolutely.
And we are helping him by talking about it tonight.
We will now move on. Let's go to losing our marbles or losing our heads, the spat between Rishi Sunak and the Greek Prime Minister. Yes.
Yeah, so it's quite unbelievable the way this unfolded. So the Greek Prime Minister was over for a 3-day visit in the UK. He's had a series of meetings lined up. He met with Keir Starmer. He's apparently got a meeting with Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker, in Parliament this week. And he was supposed to be meeting Rishi Sunak, but Number 10 pulled the meeting with very little notice. They offered up Rishi Sunak's deputy instead, Oliver Dowden, which the Greek Prime Minister turned down, because normally in diplomatic circles, if you're a Prime Minister, you've got to be meeting with somebody of your status and seniority. And the reason for that is that he gave an interview to BBC, the other place, over the weekend, and he was asked directly about the Elgin marbles, this amazing treasure that was brought to the UK by Lord Elgin in the early 1800s. It's been in the British Museum for decades here in the UK, and the Greeks want it back, and kind of fair enough. It's a Greek treasure.
Suggesting it was like tearing the Mona Lisa in half to split the Elgin marble strip
I'm a big believer. Yeah, and if something comes from the Acropolis, it should be exhibited where it's from. Even George Osborne, who's the former Conservative Chancellor and who is the chair of the British Museum, he's apparently said that he's open to a deal about, you know, a loan back with a kind of a view to some form
other
of return.
antiquities or...
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's totally fair enough for the Greek... This is the Greek government's position, totally. But Rishi Sunak took against this and refused to meet him. And you've just got to say, well, is this a way... The Greeks are an important ally. Is this a way to conduct diplomacy? But obviously, two countries are not going to agree on absolutely everything. That shouldn't sort of prevent you from getting together and holding a meeting.
Well, I couldn't agree more on the point that why did the Greeks bring this up at this juncture? Because the fact was, as we've seen from some... Well, no, they weren't. If you see some leaked emails that came out from the Foreign Office today, then it was very clear that it was said that if you want to have that fruitful diplomatic relationship that you were just talking about, Sonia, then don't make this the primary issue of what this visit is about. The visit was meant to be about economic ties, about
the
trading
investment
partnerships.
meeting, yeah.
Exactly, the big investment summit that happened yesterday at Hampton Court Palace. And yet the Greek Prime Minister, I think, was the petulant one who decided to go on the primary BBC political programme with Laura Kuenssberg and raise this as an issue after having been asked, suggesting it would not be a good idea. And then, what a surprise, he doesn't get to meet with the Prime Minister after this was made very clear through diplomatic channels. I have a different view from Sonia on this. I don't think it's fair enough on the Greeks to say this, because this is actually not an issue for the British government. The Elgin marbles belong to the British Museum, and there was a parliamentary select committee that's looked into this. And essentially, the fact is there may be some accommodation in the future about sharing them, but this is not an issue for the Prime Minister. And it's not an issue for the Greek Prime Minister who wants to come here and do this.
Prime Minister, that's even more reason for them for it not to sort of get in the way of a meeting.
Well, I agree the Greeks shouldn't have raised it, Sonia. You're completely right on that. The Greeks should not have done that.
Were asked about it. He was asked about it directly. Is he supposed to lie about his government's position? Of course not. I mean,
you don't have to lie about it. You don't have to make a row about it.
But it's not making a row if you're asked a question to give a direct answer, is it? I mean, I think it looks petulant, to use Seb's word, of Rishi Sunak, and that certainly seems to be the way it's fallen with the public. The polling shows that the public don't really, get what this is about.
Well, I mean, the only problem is that if you give something back, will the whole lot go back, do you think? Will you have to empty every museum in this country?
It's the whole concept of the British Museum, which is one of our national treasures that exist, to bring these things together in an accessible way. And
I'm sure the Greeks are capable of that, though.
Of course they are, but the fact is the British Museums, the reason they existed successfully for hundreds of years is bringing those objects together. And I don't buy this whole argument that everything has to go back exactly as it was. History is a developing thing. And I think the Elgin marbles are great where they are.
OK, Sonia's just like looking at you. Anyway,
lots
more still to come. Lots more still to come. Michael Gove admits serious government failings at the COVID inquiry. We'll talk about more on that rather after this. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Sonia Sodha and Sebastian Payne. Welcome to both of you. Sebastian, why don't we go through the COVID inquiry then? Michael Gove was there. Rants, it looks like, at Dominic Cummings. I mean, rants at everybody during this. But anyway, what did we hear today? So we had more sweary text messages that have become a defining feature of this COVID inquiry, as all the WhatsApps from senior government officials and ministers have been made public. And today it was an exchange between Michael Gove, who was then the Cabinet Office Minister, and Dominic Cummings, who was then Chief of Staff, effectively, in Downing Street. And as per the Mirror's thing, Michael Gove has warned they were effing up, if we can say that, the government's response to COVID. And clearly this backwards and forth shows what was very clear at this point, that Boris Johnson was struggling with the enormity of the decisions he was having to make at this point. And there was a lot of frustration amongst officials and ministers about the direction the government was going. And in his typical manner, Michael Gove was being very smooth and complimentary about other people within the government. But I think these messages show how frustrated he was with Downing Street at that point. But it is interesting that, Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary who runs the civil service, he's come in for a lot of criticism, as has Boris Johnson, as has Dominic Cummings, whereas Michael Gove sort of went out of his way to defend them and was highlighting what a difficult situation it was. And these big pressures being faced were huge. The fact was that lockdown was against every single one of Boris Johnson's political instincts, is what he said today at the inquiry. And that was part of the reason why there may have been a little oscillations, shall we say, between decision-making. And, delay at the start, as we've heard from Jenny Harries and everybody. I think your phraseology was a little bit pushing my limits there, so apologies to anyone offended, but there we are.
Apologies.
Yes, I'm going to move on if you don't mind, because we've got quite a lot to pack in.
Yeah.
The benefits of exercise, once again, specifically now for diabetes as well, as amongst other things.
So this is a study that's covered on the front page of the Times. Absolutely. And the findings are that people who walk at a speed faster than 2.5 miles per hour...
How do you know? Sorry.
Well, I guess what they strap pedometers onto people and measured their walking speed, but it's associated with a reduced risk of diabetes. I have to say, reading this, it does raise as many questions when you read newspaper articles that cover these scientific studies as many as it answers, because there's two things. First of all, there could be some reverse causality, so people who are generally fitter might walk faster and then also have low risk of diabetes. But I'm also interested in what they controlled for, because, yes, I mean, fitter people are likely to walk faster and they are likely to have better health. So did they control for the fact that people's fitness levels as well as walking speed? It's not very clear from this, so I'm not 100% sure what we can take from it.
Yeah, there is one paragraph that raises more questions, which says the threshold at which the risk appeared to lower 2.5 miles an hour is equivalent to 87 steps a minute for men and 100 steps a minute for women. The findings suggest who measures how many steps a minute they're walking.
It's fine for a study, but how do I know when I'm doing 2.5 miles an hour as I go along? See what I mean? Anyway.
Maybe everyone needs to measure.
Well, if you get yourself a little wrist wearable device, obviously I'm not going to mention a brand.
Thank you.
It does tell you what speed you're walking at when you switch it into outdoor walk mode. Yeah.
What you need to do is you need a little test, I think, so you know how fast you walk, and basically you need to speed up or slow down.
Now, is it a sign that Nigel Farage is not that interesting, that we're now talking about grubs on I'm a Celebrity rather than personalities, do you think?
Well, I have to confess, I haven't been watching it this year because I find the tasks, are they called tasks? The challenges?
Bush Tucker trials.
I find them so disgusting and hard to watch. They just...
OK, you're making Chris Packham's point for it.
Yes, so Chris
look
Packham,
after the animals,
the famous naturalist, is basically saying, you're so cruel to animals, this has got to stop.
They are now dead, though.
My thing is that, I mean, they are quite basic animals, aren't they? They're insects and things. But, you know, obviously we should take care of them.
Quite big,
we should take care of them and make sure they're treated well and stuff. But, yeah, I find this show very difficult to watch because I'm just too squeamish.
Well, I did watch the first couple of episodes. Just fascinating to see how Nigel Farage came across. We obviously had the former health secretary, Matt Hancock, on last year. And ultimately, I think Chris Packham comes up with a lot of silly things, and this is another one of them.
OK, Sebastian and Sonia, thank you both very much indeed. We will see you for the 11th. Here's the weather.